Hello there, welcome to this lesson on using FluidDesigner for 3D printing. In today's lesson we're going to introduce you to using FluidDesigner 2015 Release 2, and we're going to show you how to do lesson 1 to create a simple vase, part of a series of lessons we produced on ceramic and porcelain objects. Now, if you haven't actually already got FluidDesigner for 3D printing, you can go to our website at fluiddesigner.co.uk, and if you click on the go to the downloads page, so you just click on the downloads button, you can download a stable release of it for Windows 64 version. So you just click on the download button and then you can follow the instructions on how to install it. Essentially you need to load up the application, and then you also, to load all of the asset libraries that we've produced, the learning projects, you need to go to File and load FluidDesigner defaults, and then close down the program and start it again, and that will get the application up and running. If you've already got Microvellum's FluidDesigner on your system and you just want to upload our 3D printing tools and our learning projects, that's the lessons that we've produced, you can click on this button here to load down the learning project files only. If you haven't got Microvellum, you can always go to their website and download that as well. It's also completely free of charge, and we also at the same time recommend that you download NetFab Basic. So you either need to download the stable release, and we also recommend NetFab Basic, or if you've got Microvellum FluidDesigner, you can install our learning projects files. So once you've started FluidDesigner and you've configured it, and as I've just said, you need to go to File, Load FluidDesigner Defaults, shut the application down and then open it up again. And when you do that, you should get a screen that looks something like this. And the important thing to look for is all of these folders here, which should load up, and they all contain either lessons or template files for you to use. If these images don't actually display for some reason, and occasionally they don't, just click on Group Library button here and it will refresh the screen, and then these objects will be available to you. All the instructions for doing this particular lesson are available in the help window here, so if you don't want to watch the video, you can just read the instructions in the help window there. And essentially what you've got to do is drag and drop this object onto the workspace, and at this stage we can move this window a little bit back, and there's our first object, and we're going to, in this lesson, show you how we can convert this into a very simple vase. I'm just holding down the center mouse button now and rocking the mouse so I can look around this object. The red arrow here is the X direction, the green arrow is the Y direction, and the Z arrow is the Z direction. If I just go to view and view it from the front again, what you'll also notice is that we've started off the screen in centimeters here, so we can measure the size of this object. It's about 1, 2, 3, 4, it's about 4 centimeters tall. If you want to measure it more accurately, if we just look at the end of the toolbar here, there's an interactive ruler. So we can actually measure the height of this object, so 41 millimeters. So that's an alternative way of looking at the height of it. But also in the properties window here, if we click on the information icon, that's the first icon here, we'll see what the X, Y and Z dimensions of this particular object are. Now it's this object on the outside that's actually highlighted at the moment, and this object's a Bezier curve. And this Bezier curve, what it's actually doing is it's enabling me to change the main object, and I can resize it just by dragging and pulling out the ends. So I can modify this object, make it any size that I want, and if I want to make it a little bit bigger now, I can just scroll the center mouse button and zoom out. So I can change the size of my object and change the shape of it. And I'm just going to produce a very simple vase today. And once you've actually got that, and you're happy with the shape that you've got and the size that you've got, and clearly you need to look at the values here or use the interactive ruler to measure it, Once you're happy with that, you can come out of edit mode. At the moment we've started this off in edit mode for you, and we can come out of edit mode by pressing the tab key on the keyboard, the tab key. And we've now in the situation where we've got two objects here. We've got this object and we've got this line at the side. And both of these objects are in fact Bezier objects, as we can see in the name here. This one's a Bezier circle. The line on the side is called a Bezier curve. Now we can't actually print Bezier circles or Bezier curves. What we've got to do is to change them into meshes first of all. And we can do that by, I'm just scrolling the center mouse button here to move across my toolbar. If we go to Tools and Object Tools and convert this object to a mesh now once I've done this, I won't be able to switch back easily. I mean, there are ways to go back obviously, but we've now changed that object into a mesh. And if I click on the curve at the side now if I try and move this, well, first of all I've got to go into edit mode, so I need to press the tab key on the keyboard to go back into edit mode. And you'll see now as I move this, it's not having any effect on this object. They're not connected anymore. Once we've converted this to a mesh, the Bezier curve has got no say in it at all now. So what we could do is we could actually, if we just come out of edit mode for the moment, and with this object highlighted, the Bezier curve, I can actually just delete it. I don't need to use it anymore, so I can press the X key on the keyboard with it highlighted and to delete that selected object. Notice that the properties window closed there as well. So if I just click back up onto the Bezier circle now, you'll see that that's still there, and these are the dimensions of it. Now if I just zoom in on it, you'll see that this object at the moment has got no sort of thickness. It's also not got a base at the bottom. So we want to be able to add those to create a vase. So first of all what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll the center mouse button and zoom into the bottom here. And I'm going to add a base to the bottom of this object. So I'm going to first of all go into edit mode. So again I'm going to press the tab key on the keyboard. And if I click the right mouse button and look at the selection mode, there's a number of different ways in which we can select parts of this mesh. We can select the vertices, vertex select. Each of these dots in the corner are vertices, so we can select those. Again, if I click the right mouse button, if I select edge select, you'll see that what I'm selecting here is the edge of each of these faces, the middle bit here, as we're going to see in a second. If I switch to face select mode, click on there, I've selected a face. So there are different ways in which we can select this mesh, and what I want to do is I want to select the bottom edge all the way around the bottom of this object. So I want to select the bottom edge and I want to put a new face in the bottom. So what I'm going to do is right click, change selection mode to edge select, and if I just click on the bottom here, all I do is select one small bit of the rim of this object. But if I hold down the Alt key and press it, you'll see that the whole of the bottom rim has now been selected. And if I now press the F key on the keyboard and add a face to this object, what I've just done, and I'm just zooming out by scrolling the center mouse button, what I've done is I've added a face to the bottom of this object now. And that was the aim of that little part of the lesson. And we can now come out of edit mode. So we've got our basic object here, but it hasn't got any thickness. If we zoom in here, you'll see that this is just a very thin shell. And so we can't print this because there are limits on the size of objects that we can print. They need a certain thickness. So what we need to do is to add some thickness to this object, and we can do that by using a modifier. So if we click on this spanner icon here in the properties window, what I want to do is I want to add a modifier, and the modifier I'm going to add is a solidify modifier. I'm going to change this object and give it some thickness. And as you can see there, as I did that, we got some small change in this object. And if I just open this panel a moment, you can see here's the thickness property. And if I click on the right hand side of this, you'll see that the object, as I change this to 4 and 5 and 6 millimeters, the object is getting thicker on the inside. On the inside. I'll just reduce the thickness down again. So I've put it back to 0, which is not what we're looking for. So clicking on here adds some thickness on the inside. Now if we wanted to add the thickness on the outside, we can change this value here. At the moment the offset is set to -1, and it offsets the thickness from the center. If we change that to +1, what you should notice is that as we add thickness, it will add it on the outside of the object. So depending upon what you're doing and what shape you want the finished object, you can add thickness to the inside or the outside. So I want a thickness of just 4 millimeters. That's adequate to print in ceramics. And so we've got our thickness here. What we need to do, however, we need to confirm this thickness. And to do that, what we need to do is again go to Tools, Object Tools, and convert the object to a mesh. And when we do that, this modifier panel will clear, and this object now is fixed at 4 millimeters thick. So that's our object. What we need to do is save it. Now we always recommend in FluidDesigner, instead of going to File and Saving, if you do that you'll delete our original files. What we always recommend you do is to go to File and Save As. And if you just click here and go up through the menu system, what you should find is on your system there is a folder called My Projects. I'll just show you that again. It's My Projects, Ceramic and Porcelain Projects. So what we need to do is to go to that folder, and we can save this file, and it's a Blender file because FluidDesigner is using Blender as the engine in the background, and we can save it as Lesson 01 as a vase. So we save that Blender file. Now we can't actually print Blender files, so what we also need to do is we need to save this in a printable file format. And the way to do that is to go to File and to Export, and File and Export. Now we like to save them as wavefront objects, so I'm going to save it as a wavefront object. And I like to save them on the desktop when I do this, and later on delete them once we've actually printed them. So I'm going to save 01 vase. This time, instead of as a Blender file, it's an OBJ file, and this is a printable file format. So I'm going to export that to the desktop. Now it's always the case in FluidDesigner that you must check the mesh. You cannot just simply print any old file. And we recommend that you use a tool called NetFab Basic. And we've started off NetFab Basic here, and you can download that from the internet as we explained earlier. And you always need to run every single printing file through NetFab Basic and check it first of all and get NetFab to fix it. So if we go to Project and Open and go to the desktop, we want Lesson 01 vase. This is our object file. It's not our Blender file, it's our object file. And if we open that, NetFab will actually analyze it. Now sometimes you'll get a warning red triangle in the bottom right hand corner here, which is telling you that the object won't print. In this case it's okay, but we always recommend that you actually run the repair procedure in NetFab. Whatever you do, always run repair, because NetFab likes to actually triangulate the meshes, which puts it into a printable file format, and it will just double check everything for you. Now my NetFab won't fit quite neatly in my screen grabber, so I'm just going to move it across. And the thing to look for in NetFab is that there are no border edge problems, there are no invalid orientations, and there are no holes in the object. So we always recommend you do that. Check it, and oops, that's the problem with my screen grabber, I just moved it a bit too high. We always recommend also that you run automatic repair, and that you also apply the repair and remove any old parts. We always would recommend that you do that, even if there doesn't seem to be any warning red triangle. Just do it out of habit. And once you've done that, you can go to Part, Export the part, export it as a wavefront object again. I'm going to export it to the desktop, and NetFab will add the little extension repaired to the file name there, and you can save that, and that file is now in a printable file format. So that's the end of today's lesson, creating a simple vase 4mm thick. Thank you.